Sometimes, even with the better position, you have no choice but to prepare for a long defense. Today, a Grandmaster corners the Syndicate. Let's see how we make him pay. In this game, we're looking at a violent encounter between Grandmaster Gabu and National Master Nelson. Gabu played a cocky opening, throwing his Don Colt straight at f7. A reckless move, if you ask me. Let's see if we can punish that kind of insolence. When the Godfather is forced out of his safe house, your first priority is to keep the heat off him. You need to get your muscle deployed and stop the pursuit in its tracks. The second priority is to block the kickback strategy White is planning to unleash upon us with their extra mobs. As the opening chaos settles, our crew has two ways to square the debt. We can either return the hit for a better position or simply outmaneuver the opposition. On the other hand, White's goals are to keep pieces on the board and support the mobs to muscle our hitters backwards. Naturally, creating passed pawns is another weapon in their arsenal. Playing c5 is the textbook move to contest the downtown. Usually, that's how you control the streets. But when the Godfather is in the line of fire, your first priority is to keep the heat off him. You aren't just fighting for the district anymore, you're fighting for his survival. And that is exactly what Hitman E6 achieves. The rival family cranked up the heat on the Godfather with the Hitman, but he missed a prime opportunity to lure the boss out from his bodyguards with Hitman E6. Perhaps the GM wanted to save his hitters for the final assault. But this defensive B3 move is a lapse in judgment. He's going to lose that Hitman in the upcoming duel anyway. So why prolong the inevitable? After the opposition recaptured the Hitman on c4, Black opted to deploy the other Hitman to e7. Usually, this pawn structure screams for a fianchettoed setup, but slotting the Hitman on e7 is a surprisingly viable move in the field. White secured the perimeter and castled. A professional play here. But then, Nelson surprised me with brick e8. You'll see, positioning your bricks is fairly easy in this case. Simply assess which streets hold the most action potential, and here, the semi-open E and F streets are pretty obvious. By parking that brick on e8, he literally blocked his other asset from getting into the action. Fortunately, the rival wasn't familiar with the drill and settled for d3. Remember, our objective is to stop our pieces from being kicked back. Therefore, White should have used those extra mobs to muscle our crew, establishing a stranglehold on districts in our territory. The natural reply, Don Colt c6, didn't align with our blockading strategy, which became more important as the brick is parking where Don Colt could return to in case of a pursuit. This is why I encouraged everyone in my Godfather in Jail video to evolve their development mantra. Moving Molly to d7 would have solved two problems at once. While it improves the queen's position, it also throws a wrench into the gears, slowing down the opposition's kickback strategy. After Gabu developed his brick, Nelson replied with Molly to d7. It gets her into the game, while simultaneously taking care of that vulnerable b7 mob. Chipface likes Don Colt d5 here. While this goes against the keep pieces on the board strategy, there is a highly favorable trade-off. If the Syndicate initiates the duel between the Don Colts, our asset is forced into an awkward position. Also, the tempting octopus position on d4 is a total blunder. Our beast would simply meet his fate at the hands of a low-life mob. However, The Grandmaster positioned his hitman on a powerful diagonal. It is a strong move on its own, but from that angle, he can't support the pawn push and kickback strategy anymore. Not to mention, it completely blocks the exit for his previously developed brick on b1. The family answered the best possible way, since Molly is finally free from babysitting duty. After White prepares the g4 pawn push, Black replied with h5. It looks like a tempting shot, but it is pretty useless as the g5 kick has lost its venom as it runs into our blockade and outmaneuver strategy, and it is in an opposite district we planned to hold the line. Here, the opposition can centralize Don Colt again, since its rival is tied down defending that h5 mob. Gabu brilliantly exploited this to reroute Don Colt to an even better position, preserving the manpower. As a response, the family restricted Don Colt from invading with g6. However, it empowers the hitman on b2. As the rival failed to exploit the situation, the Syndicate finally managed to resolve its greatest problem. The idle brick on a8 is finally awake. The f5 break was ready to launch, but White fumbled with brick to e1. This mistake allowed the family to increase coordination between the crew members. White lashed out with f5, which didn't work this time. It allowed crucial liquidations, optimizing Don Colt to a better position to participate in the next strategic phase. The Grandmaster didn't like this at all and ordered his hitman to hunt down our beast. Now, pause the video if you want to find the best defense for the Syndicate. The family has 3 problems to solve. The real danger here is the open street. The opposition can occupy it with tempo, since those bricks are completely disconnected from each other, and that connects directly to the second problem. The brick on e5 doesn't help much. Its quickest activation would be in the g5 district. That's another reason why attacking Molly with hitman to g5 is not ideal this time. The third issue is the temporary g6 outpost. Psychologically, this is the most annoying, but in fact, it is the smallest of the 3. Fighting is not an option this time. Luckily, the blockading strategy is right at hand. Brick f6 allows to recapture with the hitman, who can then serve as a blockader on the f street, overwatching any possible pawn pushes on his diagonal. Keep in mind that this recapture with tempo is a common strategy in the openings, but it works in all phases of the game. Nelson fell for the tempting hitman g5. No judgment here. I would have played the same way. The next crucial point came with the brick trades. Now you know our crew is not allowed to give away the street with tempo, but fighting is not viable anymore, so the next best thing we can do here is to erect a blockade. Which capture allows us to create that blockade? Molly f8 or Godfather f8? The answer is Molly to f8, because after White plays brick to f1, the hitman can enter the blockading position, and next the Godfather himself steps up to g7 to participate in the defense. This move solidifies the blockade and finally frees Molly from the pin. Instead, Black chose the worse line, and White instantly occupied the f street. Even so, the strategy for our crew remains the same. Get the Godfather involved to build a blockade on that f street anyway. Here is a sample line. Unfortunately, Black blundered with brick E7. But Molly hitting G6 is an even bigger blunder. If you want to find the best moves for White in both cases, go ahead and pause here. Molly G6 is punished with a simple yet fatal tactic, but the game actually continued with the other line. As Molly leaps to F5, she kicks the hitman while creating serious back rank issues at the same time. As the Black Syndicate continued to collapse, White made a fatal blunder. It is incredibly hard to spot under such pressure, but the well-known CCTO mantra would have led straight to victory. The Syndicate held the advantage right up until that chaotic street fight, but ultimately lost the game. Going back through the logs in a rematch, I found some valuable insights. The most critical moment was a hitman exchange. Usually we don't like our hitman if our mobs are on the same districts he uses. So what happens here, where we swap our bad hitman for a powerful one, and we still lose 1 point in equity? Well, all 3 recaptures ends up in positional disadvantage, namely isolated mobs, losing space due to the rival's kickback strategy, or a poorly positioned Don Colt who can bite nothing but rocks. While the trade fails here, the dominance of that B2 hitman is still manageable by placing Don Colt on E5. Contrast the outcomes for yourself. There is a scenario where the returning sacrifice serves our agenda perfectly, and there is the alternative where it is simply bad business, resulting in a cemented monster for the rival on E6. Another golden nugget is that the dangerously looking Don Colt on E6 can't keep its position, since we can use our brick for a returning sacrifice. Remember, this card is only usable once in a situation like this. Here are 2 more defensive ideas that can prove useful. First, tucking the Godfather in the middle while he participates in the defense. And second, a pawn sacrifice in order to activate our bricks to protect the Godfather. If the Godfather is safe, we can even send Molly to cause some chaos far from the defense. I was sure it was a very bad idea, and really disliked it when Nelson sent her out. However, this brilliant concept was there in various top engine lines. Unfortunately, his Godfather needed a bit more safety, and he paid a hefty price for this minor misevaluation. The Grandmaster launched the attack, but the real battle was never about tactics. He wasn't hunting our pieces. He was taking over our territory, district by district, until the Syndicate collapsed. Next, we'll uncover the strategy behind Alpha Zero's famous pawn push,